Okay. So today's webinar is putting your best skills forward in career transition. Now, let me just take a moment to introduce our speaker for today's session. Kevin Tennant is a partner in LHH's Interim Executive Management practice. His group helps organizations acquire expert talent to help with gaps due to resignations, unexpected exits, and strategic change projects. Having practiced both full-time and interim executive search, he has a unique perspective on how professionals in transition better differentiate themselves to land meetings which lead to productive and engaging conversations. So, Kevin, over to you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone that's attending today. We're quite excited about sharing the content of today's webcast. Over the last 6 months, I've been publishing articles that focus on how to better promote your skills and make better use of your time while searching for full-time and interim opportunities. The response has been very, very positive, and this webcast was created to focus on one of the core concepts talked about in the articles, that of a unique value statement. We feel that this tool will help you to be more effective at getting networking meetings and on the journey to land an interim or full-time engagement. Just so you know, since Sarah has told you we're going to record this, we'll send you a link to it tomorrow, so you can review it as many times as you want. For that reason, I'd recommend that you give yourself permission to experience the content and to think about how it applies to you. There's no need, unless you absolutely want to write down everything that's on the slides or everything that I say. Either way, it's completely up to you. Let's have a look at the session objectives. So by the end of our session today, you're going to be able to understand what's changed in the market and why we feel that a different approach is required. You're also going to be able to define your unique value in the market. Every one of us has a unique value, and it's really a matter of what are the things that you've achieved some level of mastery in. These represent your deep experience, your expertise, and your perspective. We want to tap into that, so those skills you're able to translate those into unique value statements. And we're going to engage you in a framework that makes it easier to develop unique value statements that you can evolve and refine over time. So to begin with, I'd like to start off with a poll. And Sarah, if you want to launch the poll, please. What we'd like to know is, when reaching out to new contacts in the marketplace, and this could be reaching out via telephone, LinkedIn, emails, or just general social networking kinds of situations, what percentage of these outreaches are you able to convert into actual calls where you can have a discussion about their business and what have you, and or meetings? So if you want to go ahead and cast your vote. Okay. Just give you another couple of seconds. Okay, so if you want to close the poll, please, Sarah. And the results. Okay, fair enough, fair enough. So I'm not entirely surprised by these results. The last time we did this was in July, and we had most of the results, just like today, in the middle two brackets, the 11 to 25 and the 25 to 50%. And that's what we would expect. I'm a little bit surprised by the less than 10%. And I'm going to say that likely has to do with sort of the time we're in. We're obviously in a very challenged time in the marketplace, and it's going to be very, very difficult for getting in touch with people. So we'll talk a little bit more about that very, very soon. Okay, so you can go ahead and close that off now, Sarah. Thank you very much. Excellent. So, as I indicated, it's it's very challenging, in the marketplace right now, and for that reason, the people that especially had the upper levels of success, in terms of the sort of 25% plus. If you feel up to sharing some of your successful tips in the chat area as we go along, that would be really, really good. We want to ensure that everyone on this call walks away with some new ideas that are helpful for them. So now the good news is that there's always room for improvement. And if you're able to increase the percentage of outreaches that result in a call or a meeting, you should increase the number of opportunities that you're looking at. And we would hope that that would really reduce the amount of time you spend in transition. So I want to take a moment and take a look at a case study of an actual person that's applied these skills. William is, or Bill, as I call him, is an experienced interim executive. His focus is on the transportation and third-party logistics sector, and he's done a number of things, launching, operations for international firms, leading sales functions, quite a number of different things. We spoke back in May, and I introduced this concept that we're going to present to you today. During that conversation, he latched onto it immediately and decided to focus his efforts on approaching private equity partnerships that invest in transportation and third-party logistics sectors, his areas of specialty. Basically, his unique value is being able to help these organizations get turned around very, very fast. And so looking at his results, what he did, his very first campaign, he sent out 40 emails and had a response rate, an astounding response rate of 67.5%. Some of the response was, sorry, not really interested, but thanks for getting in touch with us. And nonetheless, that could get a bit of a conversation going. And he was able to convert 45% of his initial outreaches into calls. So, definitely he's in the upper part of it. The neat thing is he landed a 8-week engagement. And then he turned around and applied this again and landed an 18-month engagement, which he's now in. And we were conversing just the other day, and he's really, really enjoying it. So Bill's only one of the several people that I've shared this with over time that has been able to successfully land meetings, engagements, and full-time jobs. What makes his case successful is his relentless focus on execution, which likely during the process telegraphed to his prospects that he would, operate, like that for them. So, really the message here is that Bill would agree that there's luck involved, but there was also a lot of, diligent follow-up and sticking to a plan and working a plan. Certainly LHH's career transition coaches would tell you that it takes a whole lot more than 40 outreaches to land something. So, certainly he had a bit of luck going on in this particular situation. So let's take a look at the current market context. So it's not business as usual. The impact on professional jobs from COVID was initially slower, but it's really starting to accelerate. And as we progress through the next few years, we'll continue to feel the impact due to the massive changes in the structure of economy. Entire business models are in tatters. As we know, retail is certainly front and center. We hear about it every day on the news. And so corporate focus is now on survival. The question is, what do we need to do to ensure we remain in business for the next 6 months? And so, they're looking at all kinds of things. They're looking at their business resilience plan. They're looking at how do we digitize this so that we don't have to rely upon, brick and mortar types of situations in brick and mortar facilities in order to run a business. They're also looking at, this remote working thing is not any longer just a stopgap. It's a standard operating procedure. And so we need to understand how to train our managers to lead and train our people to work remotely, remain accountable, and be able to function, and at the same time maintain their mental health. So there's a lot of different issues here. All this while businesses are under very increased focus or demand to focus on things like equality, diversity, and inclusion, which there was an undertow of that, and that's really picked up now as well. So, really what we're looking at is over the next while, we're going to see more of a focus on hiring for skills. And skills are what they need in order to meet their immediate priorities. Gartner has reported that around 58% of organizations have seen a shift in the types of skills they need as a result of COVID. Things like working remotely and leading remotely, just as an example I've already mentioned. And the pressure to find these skills has intensified. They don't have time to go through an extensive search and to hire a CFO or a vice president of whatever, marketing. They just need a little piece of what that person brings to the table. Now, here's the good news. You're still needed. However, you may need to be flexible in how you engage. Many of you may find yourself in an interim engagement where you use a subset of your complete skills package. These will be the skills that you're truly an expert at. And this requires a different way of thinking about your career and how you approach networking and engaging during your search. So I ask you, can you pivot to being engaged rather than employed? And those who can be agile are going to have far more success in their search. So some things we know. It's going to be harder to get an executive's attention. They're busier than ever. The stakes are huge, and there's a lot of people knocking on their door. It hasn't materialized yet, but the volume of people in transition will be larger than it has been since the financial crisis in 2008, 2009. Executives are going to receive a substantial increase in requests for networking meetings, and it's going to be very difficult for them to sort through and decide who they give their time to. And so having a clear, compelling market-aligned message is going to be critical to be the one that they say yes to. A new factor that we haven't seen in past downturns is that we're now looking at a global skills market. The pandemic and remote working has made it possible and viable for people to compete for positions all over the world. We've seen this with people in the US looking at positions in Canada, people in Canada looking at positions in the US. So you might want to, if you're open to it, extend your search to include all of Canada or beyond, especially for interim engagements. Another thing is companies in smaller and more remote locations find it challenging to fill specialist and executive roles. So it may make sense to include these locations in your search. It could also possibly decrease the amount of competition you have for some roles. So let's take a look at unique value statements. So this is really something that is very similar in some ways, but much more specific to the 30-second elevator speech that a lot of you have developed. We want you to have everything you need to create impactful, unique value statements that differentiate you and position you to land meetings and be invited to take on interim engagements and to consider full-time roles. For those of you who are seeking full-time roles, you can use this approach to increase your success in landing networking meetings. The intent is to get attention with an approach that speaks to the target's pain. In other words, what's in it for them and what have you, not just your own history. So let's take a look at what a unique value statement is. So this type of statement, really, the difference is it focuses on them and their problems and how your skills can help. And it answers the question, what's in it for me? This is a question that they're always asking in the back of their mind to decide who they're going to give time to. And it's a question that we all ask when we're being pitched for the first time. In the current market, organizations have numerous problems to solve, and you may be able to leverage one or more of your skills to land an interim engagement. Your unique value statement will help you create a springboard for conversation. So let's take a closer look at the element of a skill. First of all, when I say unique, I don't mean that you're the only person on the face of this earth that has that skill. But it could be a skill that many people have. However, the difference is that you apply this skill in such a way as to get a superior result. It's just like in sports. I've been playing golf since I was 8 years old, and I'll tell you, it's not a unique value skill. I'm nowhere near Tiger Woods in his prime. And it's just something that, that he was able to do, and to master that game, to be exceptional. And there are things that I'm exceptional at that I'm sure he has absolutely no interest in. So a skill has two aspects. A skill has the mechanics. This is the science. This is the what to do. And it also has the application. This is the art. And someone who has achieved mastery in any area has done so by blending their technical skills and their soft skills. Let me give you an example between art and science. So most finance professionals know the mechanics of how to put together a cash flow projection using Excel, which is, by the way, a technical skill. However, many are lacking in the artful application of this skill and being able to apply it as a strategic business tool. This is because the tool is really of no use unless you can negotiate with customers to pay faster and suppliers to accept later payment. Negotiation is a soft skill that, when blended with the technical skill, achieves a superior benefit. As you'll look at your own skills, you'll find that there are certain skills that you can do exceptionally well. The difference is often how much time you've spent applying the skill and whether you blend your soft skills to achieve a result. So let's take a look at, I have in front of you 3 levels to a skill. The first level really is that it's common to all. It's not going to be one of your unique skills, and it's typically only going to be a technical skill. If you're an executive that works with mid-level managers to help them achieve an objective, that's a level 1 skill. It's table stakes. It's really, if you don't have that, you're not going to do well in your position. Level 2, at this level, there's going to be some noticeable uniqueness in your abilities. You're going to be likely very competent at the mechanics, better than most. You can do it very well, better than others, but the advantage may not be sustainable because others can catch up in a short period of time. Level 3, this is the gold. This is where you want to be. This is where you've achieved mastery. And you have both the science down pat and you're an artist at these skills. You can apply them far better than others. You can achieve a superior result, and others are unlikely to catch up in a very short time frame. This is where you have a unique value skill to offer. So the 5 components of your unique value statement are, first of all, and we're going to go into more detail with each one of these in a couple of moments. The first one is, who is the target employer or client, if you're looking at it from an interim point of view or a consulting point of view? What is the burning need that they have? In other words, what is their pain, or what is the opportunity that they can leverage? What skills will you leverage from your toolkit to help them solve their problem? And what will be the result of them engaging you? And finally, you need to give some proof. And so this will be a little mini vignette of some work you've done in the past. So let's talk about creating your unique value statement. For those that are interested in interim engagements, your ability to isolate and articulate your most salient skills are going to really be able to set you up as a rock star in certain areas. Organizations hire interims because they don't want to suffer through a steep learning curve. They're coming to you to reduce their risks. So often people ask me, well, how do I come up with a unique value skill? And how do I determine this? So for some of you, your mind might already be spinning with thoughts of what your unique skills are already. But what we want to do is get as many of them down on a page as possible. So, first and foremost, what problems or issues do you find yourself fixing everywhere you go? You go to company X and you fix this, you go to company Y and you fix this. It's a repetitive skill. It's something that you've applied many times over the course of your career. Now, the interesting thing is the problem existed before you arrived. Either people didn't notice it or they didn't know what to do about it. But you did, you solved it, the company's benefited. The next one is, what do you find people coming to you and asking for your help with? We don't always notice what our unique skills are, but others do. And these are areas that they rely upon us for help. So what are some of those things, for you? Are you somebody that's good at motivating people? Do you have a highly engaged workforce working for you, where some of your colleagues' turnover is crazy and things just aren't going so well? What are some of the recurring successes that are mentioned on your performance appraisals, your assessments, and what have you? Things like I mentioned, do you have consistently high engagement in your department? And others want to know how to pull that off. Where have you been able to increase efficiency, increase revenue, decrease expenses, remove bottlenecks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Innovation, adding products or services, very, very important. This is my personal favorite. If money were not an obstacle, what would you choose to work on? How much fun would it be if your work life became a get to rather than a have to? That would be really cool, I think, for most people. And that's an opportunity, especially within interim, because you could choose to only do certain things. You don't have to take the whole job like you have to do in a full-time role. So just a little nudge in case you're looking for a reason to try interim. Really what we find too is that people that come to us saying that they're interested in a not-for-profit type of opportunity, they're looking to get into a get-to. They don't want to do all the other things that they don't want to. They want to feel excitement and passion about their work. But the interesting thing is we've had a number of people go through this exercise and get all fired up about their unique value skills and realize that they can find joy in a for-profit environment just as much as a not-for-profit, as long as they're doing work that they really, really enjoy. And just how awesome would that be? So when looking at your own skills, be sure to cover all the categories, the technical, strategic, et cetera. That way you have a wide range of unique skills to use in networking calls, meetings, interviews, written materials, et cetera. LinkedIn profile. To help you craft your personal unique value skill statements, we'd like to offer a model that, or a framework that will ensure that all the required elements are there. Now, we didn't invent this. Jeff Moore is the author of the book Crossing the Chasm. And if you're a marketing person, you may have read it. If you've been in tech, you've probably read it. It was published in 1991, and it's widely accepted. His value statement is widely accepted as a great tool for positioning disruptive products in new markets. So we've adjusted it for positioning your skills in the market. So let's walk through elements of this particular framework. So the first element is defining your target. The target can be defined by many attributes, but the most common would be industry sector, the size of company, stage of company development. Maybe they're a startup, maybe they're mature, maybe they're stagnant, maybe they're declining, whatever the case may be. The geographic location, number of employees, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm a big fan of being specific, and focus enables you to be deliberate about your networking. You're not going to waste time reaching out to people that just aren't going to be the right type of fit. It can help you define the targets you're looking for. Since you have experience in this area, you can claim expert status, and it really helps elevate your credibility in this particular area. And it also allows you to get referred. When you're able to convince an individual that you understand their unique challenges, they're going to refer you to others in their network, and that really is to your benefit. So looking at the second, this is the part of the statement that should elicit a bit of a response. I'm experiencing that. or I have experienced that, boy, they understand my business. I should take this person seriously. So this should be rather specific. Simply saying that you'll help an organization that's struggling to increase sales is way too general. When describing the pain points, and this is really the pain points that we talked about earlier, it's to your benefit to make them squirm a little. For them to be thinking, oh, I'm getting so much flack over consistently missing forecasts. The CEO seems to be losing patience and he's actually threatened to replace me. I'm going to book a meeting with this person to see if they can help. Maybe I can salvage my bonus for this year by finally getting it solved. Now, I might be going overboard a little bit, but only a little. I was once told by a sales trainer, they have to stir up a little bit of their pain. In other words, hurt them before you can help them. Meaning that if you motivate them with their own pain, you don't have to convince them that what you're proposing is worth considering. Now, I don't see this as being manipulative at all. In fact, I see it as being helpful. This is being of service because you're simply providing them with a reminder of something that has slipped and perhaps the motivation to finally act. So I love this quote by Dale Carnegie. When dealing with people, remember you're not dealing with creatures of logic, but creatures of emotion, creatures bristling with prejudice and motivated by pride and vanity. A little bit dramatic, but I shared this with you to drive home the point that the people that you're networking with who can potentially hire you are people with egos and emotions, and it'll serve you to stir up some of those emotions occasionally so they're more receptive to your proposition. Element 3, this is where you're going to talk about the skill or capability that you're going to apply to solve their problem. So these are the skills that you've achieved mastery, or as we talked about earlier, level 3 capability in, and they encompass your unique value that you bring to the market. If they're experiencing the pain you mentioned in element 2, this is where they're going to start to really get drawn into your unique value. This is where you explain how you'll help them, of course, after you've hurt them a little bit. So this part should be, getting them to think, yes, I can see how that might work. Element 4, the statement of benefit. This is the end result that they're going to get. This is the pleasure that they're going to get as a result of engaging you and allowing you to deploy your unique value statements in the marketplace. It should elicit a response of, yes, I want that too. It should be both aspirational and believable. You don't want to be the over-promise, under-deliver person. You want to be the one that comes in and knocks their socks off. And element 5, this is critical. Really, anyone can make an empty claim. And sometimes we watch commercials and say, really? No, I don't think so. This establishes that you've delivered the value in the past, and it solidifies your credibility. It's not to say that you did it perfectly. I want to be clear about that, but you learned something that may accelerate another organization's transition from where they are right now to a desired future state. You've probably made some mistakes, and you know what ditches not to jump into as you go. So a few cautions, and this is the full value positioning statement in front of you now. I caution against getting wrapped up in trying to follow this format exactly. You don't want to become mechanical or robotic. This is a guide. It's just be sure that all 5 elements are present in your statement for it to be a full value positioning statement. You want to convey that you understand their business, a potential problem they may be experiencing, and what you can do to help. If that problem is important enough to them, then this should spur some conversation that could lead to a meeting or a more detailed discussion. If that problem isn't important to them, no problems. But by demonstrating that you have some knowledge of their business, you've earned the right to ask for 2 things. First of all, for them to talk about some of their other challenges you shared with them, and quid pro quo is quite reasonable to ask for. And it may align with one of the other skills that you've achieved mastery in as well. Also, you've given credibility so you can be asked to be referred into their network. Perhaps some of their contacts are experiencing the issue that you've just described. Also, keep the jargon to a minimum. Your statements should be simple enough that your teenage kids can understand what you're saying. For example, I hear people throwing around the phrase deliver actionable insights. I'm not a fan of that statement. It's far better to say, figure out the real cause and the best options. Pretty simple. Use just straight language, and you're going to get through to a lot more people. So let's take a look at a couple of examples. I want to really, give you some good examples. So, the first example is all about, I talked about cash flow a couple of moments ago, and this seems to be my favorite. I always drag it out because it's a very, very good example. So when defining your target customer, I would encourage you to be very, very finite. So I picked food manufacturers, and you may think, well, that's not very big. Well, there's over 600 members in the Food Manufacturers Association of Canada. And so it is quite substantial. You're going to hear, if you're part of the LHH programs, that you want to generate between 150 and 250 meetings or more during the course of your transition. So you'll want to be, picking a, sort of a target audience that's big enough to generate that many, in order to get leads and what have you. And there's nothing to say that you can't have more than one target area. Maybe you've worked in food manufacturing, maybe you've worked in retail. So you may have a couple of different, I'll call them campaigns, going concurrently, where you have different value statements for different marketplaces. That's perfectly okay, as long as you can keep your story straight, between the different markets. The second element here is, in this particular case, tight cash because they've got to pay fast and they collect slow. And that's a real problem in that particular marketplace. So for your unique value statements, pick issues that are critical to the business, just like this one is to food manufacturers. The third element is, what are you going to do? In other words, what are you going to apply? In this particular case, you can recognize that negotiation is the skill that they're applying. Now, you might say, well, this is about cash flow. Well, cash flow ultimately is about getting your suppliers to accept slow payment and to get fast payment from your clients. And that requires a lot of arm twisting. And so, if they're able to close this gap, it solves a problem. And so you're going to find that negotiation, being the soft skill here, is going to be the one that really moves you forward. What's the result? If the individual that you're speaking to is feeling the pain of poor cash flow in this particular case, they're going to be quite open to this discussion. And last but not least, I mentioned proof. Critically important that you look at proof. I want to take it upstream a little bit. And this is a more soft skills kind of situation even more. We all have situations where we have high turnover. We know of businesses that have high turnover. And this particular example is particularly useful, for senior leaders and for human resources. You're going to focus more on your strategic and your leadership skills, such as driving engagement, developing leaders, and so on. So the end result is you're going to have a much clearer picture of exactly what you can do for a future employer as an interim or as a full-time person. So these are the things that you want to be really taking a look at. So let's talk about how we can use this when you interact in the marketplace. So there's several ways to use your unique value statement if you're seeking full-time and interim opportunities. In today's market, most opportunities, both full-time and interim, are acquired through networking. And we've all heard about the hidden job market. And anecdotally, that comprises 70 to 80% of the total opportunities available. I'd suspect that this is going to increase given the current market. Companies are often hiring solid candidates in, without having to advertise or bring in an executive search firm. And that applies to interims as well. We've had a couple of situations where our competition was people that networked their way into the organization. So this is the hidden market, and it's accessed by being referred and through direct networking. So to expect the highest level of success, you want to commit to a high level of consistent activity and putting in the time. So if you're, again, one of our clients in career transition, your coach is going to recommend that you have 6 to 10 meetings a week and spend 25 to 35 hours on search activities. In other words, this is your job right now. And your productivity and your goalposts are the meetings that you're getting. And that's going to measure your progress. Networking should consume 80% of this time. Research and putting together cover letters and what have you should consume the rest. And you'll spend it identifying targets, approaching them, trying out your unique value statements, and seeing what resonates. For those of you that have a one-pager, you can put your unique value statements on it. And of course, your LinkedIn profile is a great way to look at it as well. Or another great use of your unique value statements. So I'm going to go with another poll. Sarah, if you can put this poll up, I'd appreciate it. So the question is, I want to see if I've convinced some of you that interim is actually a good thing to do. So, at this time, while you're in transition, are you open to interim engagements? And so, the 4 options are, yes, I only want interim. And that might be valid for some of you because maybe you're at the point in your career where you only want to work, a couple of months a year or part-time or whatever the case may be. Some of you may be only interested in interims that'll convert to full-time. And some of you will take sort of fill-in assignments while you're looking, and some are, nope, absolutely not. I only want full-time. So take a moment to register your vote. Thank you. Okay, I think we can close that now, Sarah. Okay, excellent. I'm not surprised at all, but what I am surprised is that the number, no, I only want full-time, is much lower than I expected. I honestly expected that to be higher. So I think that tells us a couple of things. I think that, first of all, people are realizing the benefit, but they're also realizing the reality of the market we're in right now. And that's good. I'm really, really pleased to see this. For those of you that are looking for this to convert to full-time, I can tell you that on an ongoing basis, 25% of our interim opportunities do convert. And we can usually predict which ones they're going to be. And so, you can discuss that with people as you engage in this. So that's good. And for those of you that are looking at it as a fill-in, it's a very good way to keep your skills relevant, keep yourself in the marketplace and what have you. Excellent. So you can close the poll now, Sarah. Thank you. Okay. So I want to thank you for, sharing that information and perhaps it gave you some interesting perspective on things. So let's take a look at whether we've achieved our objectives. So we have definitely taken a look at the market. I hope I've provided some optimism as well as some reality. That's really what my objective is here. So, certainly what we find is that, there's going to be a lot more short-term employment available over the next little while. And so we expect that the market will lead with that and then slowly return to more full-time. This is a normal pattern whenever the economy takes a shock. So we've covered that. Second, we have talked about how to take your uniqueness and articulate it. So you have a framework now for a unique value statement that you can position yourself and your services with target clients and differentiate yourself as you look for a new full-time opportunity. So we've covered that. And we've now have a structured framework for building out your unique value statements that you can evolve and refine over time. So I think we've covered all the aspects. So I'd like to turn it over to questions now. And Sarah's going to moderate this for me. I would ask that you put them in the Q&A section, not the chat section. So Sarah's been monitoring that over time, but I don't have access to that as easily. So Sarah, would you like to start us off with a question, please?
Absolutely. So we actually have a few people asking a similar question, which is, how do you find out the problems that a company or client might be facing? Are you supposed to ask that question first in an interview, since the job posting might not include that information? Or since most of these types of problems might not be known to outsiders? So how would you suggest going about finding out what those problems are?
Certainly. Okay, that's a really good question. Thank you. So the whole idea behind this is that if you take a look at an industry, retail, okay, I'm going to pick on retail. I'm sorry for anyone that's from the retail industry that's on the call today. Basically the problems have been, trying to differentiate on any number of different things. They have to pay high overheads as compared to the online environment, et cetera. So any industry you look at, there's going to be a certain number of problems that are common to all. And then there are going to be a certain number of problems that are common to some. And it really depends upon, and each of you will understand your sector better than others, other sectors. And so really what it comes down to is looking at the problems that are common and then mapping your unique value statements to those problems. Keep in mind that in a lot of cases, your unique value statement is just going to be a credibility builder and a conversation starter. It's not that, well, they have to have this problem for me to talk about this particular problem. It's not that at all. I want to be very clear about that. These are about starting conversations and building credibility so that you can start to build a relationship with the person you're speaking with. All the better if they have the problem, or if they've had the problem, they could be thinking back saying, yeah, that one was that was a tough one and we struggled. And boy, I wish this person was here, at that time, because we would have solved it a whole lot easier. A second way that you can look at it if you want to be a little bit more research oriented is you can, all of the big four CA firms, so PwC, EY, KPMG, and Deloitte's publish research about each of the various sectors. And they typically publish it quarterly, semi-annually, and annually. And you can download those for free. And it talks about the overview of the challenges that each particular sector is looking at. So, right now, for example, financial services, that's where I live. That's the sector I serve. What they're looking at right now is two or three things. One, they're looking at, we had a 5-year plan to digitize all of our customer interactions. That plan is now 2 years and we're getting no new budget for it. So how are you going to help them with that? That's something that you want to really be able to think through. The second issue that they're dealing with is, how do we basically bolster our infrastructure to make sure that we can handle all this new work from home and customers interfacing with us digitally. Okay, so hopefully I've answered that question. There's the two ways. Next question, Sarah.
Great. Okay, so we have a question here from Lawrence asking, how do you recommend you get potential clients to look at all the skills in play, for example, the soft skills that you were speaking about before, rather than focusing on one in a negative way? So the example here is that Lawrence often finds he gets pigeonholed since he has a PhD in engineering and gets told he's too technical, rather than the person looking at their soft skills. So would you have any recommendations on how to get them to look at those other skills as well?
Yeah, so some of that is going to be, demonstrating them as you're presenting your unique value skills to people. But another way is to, get testimonials from people that you've worked with that really attest to your soft skills. And when you're, putting together unique value statements, be sure to really emphasize the soft skills. When you're approaching somebody for the first time, they may not necessarily have your resume, and they may not know that you have a PhD. So if you're, approaching people cold via email, in-mail, whatever form, you have the advantage of being able to form the first impression before they form it for you. So I hope that helps. And, certainly we would have, I think, more resources available within our career transition programs for that kind of assistance.
Great, thanks, Kevin. So I also have a question here from Colin asking, if I am interested in interim assignments, assuming I have done my UVS, what should I be doing other than attempting to connect with target organizations on my LinkedIn network?
Okay, that's a good question. So yes, absolutely, you want to leverage all the current connections you have, but you also, every time you talk to somebody, try and get referred to as many people as possible. So that will grow your network. That will get you in front of more and more people. You should also contact a few of the interim management organizations, if you will, search firms like LHH Knightsbridge. There are a few others that are focused very much on interim. And while we're not going to be the only source, once again, it's the 80-20 rule. 80% of your opportunities are going to be from that hidden market. We could have some opportunities that would be a potential for you.
Great. I'm also seeing, Kevin, quite a few questions about where on your LinkedIn profile is a good place to post your UVS, as well. Similar question about on a resume. So both on LinkedIn and resumes, where is the best place to indicate the UVS?
Yeah, absolutely. So this would be on your LinkedIn profile. It would be on the summary at the very top of your LinkedIn profile. You want them to see that first before they start. It's almost like your resume in one way. A lot of people just dump their resume on LinkedIn. That's not what LinkedIn is necessarily for. If you want an example, I've put mine right at the top on the summary. And so just go to linkedin.com/Kevin J. Tennant, and my URL will be displayed at the end here. So, and then with respect to your resume, you're going to word it in a much more concise way, because resumes can get awfully long, and so you will put it at the top as well. Just after the executive summary. Here are some of the things I'm known for, and start to list some of your unique values, skills in that particular case. But it's going to be more condensed than the entire format that we presented today.
Okay, so another question coming in from Sylvie, who's asking, how do you handle the age factor? For example, being seen as too old to start in a new industry, sector, or company?
Oh, in interim, age is a benefit. Most organizations won't consider hiring somebody on an interim basis unless they have at least 20, 25 years of experience. More and more younger people are getting involved in interim because they just like the lifestyle, but our most successful interims are, over 50 years old, 25 years of experience, etc. So age is tremendously a benefit. Now, with respect to, there was almost two questions in there. One was starting in a different industry. So I'm going to talk to that as well, because some of you may be thinking of that. Typically, you're hired for your expertise, okay? And you're hired for your expertise in terms of dealing with a certain challenge when you're brought on in it as an interim. So quite often you can overcome the industry experience issue as long as it's not too great. Now, admittedly, you're not probably going to go from manufacturing to financial services or the other way, but you could go from food manufacturing to automotive or whatever the case may be, and be able to make shifts in terms of industry that way, because they're hiring because you know how to do a certain thing, increase engagement, put together a strategic plan. Quite often fresh eyes are the very thing they need, because everyone's just been looking at it from their own lens, and it's a shared lens. So bringing somebody in without specific industry experience, in other words, out of the club, is very, very useful. And so I've seen that work in many times. And for people that are really looking at full-time, but saying, you know what, I'd like to switch industries, really hard to do. Really hard to do, as I'm sure you're aware. But taking an interim in a different industry, an industry that's your target, is a really good way of, using the skills you have, trading what you have for what you want. So I took license because I really heard two questions there. Thank you.
Which was perfect because that actually related to several questions that I was receiving. So,
Oh boy, we get done early? No, I'm just kidding.
now I do have another question from Erica, which is sort of the flip side of the coin of some of the questions that you were just addressing.
Mhm.
She says, how do I talk about my value as an entry-level customer service person? I'm transferring to financial services from retail, for example, and had just finished a college certificate.
Okay. Okay. No, that's fair. So, everyone has unique value skills. Everyone. Okay. So, in your particular case, and in a customer service kind of role, almost all of it is going to be the soft skills that we talked about. And so it's going to be, problem solving. It's going to be about de-escalation of conflict, and things like that. So those are the types of skills you want to be able to talk to. No doubt you've had some really good training. But if you're looking at sticking with this, as an area of endeavor, chances are you're pretty good at it and you feel confident in it. So I think, a combination of being able to present those types of soft skills, as well as, your enthusiasm and your interest in that, will do you quite well.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. I also have a question from Mina saying that she's new to Toronto and without a network. How would you recommend building your network?
Okay, so a couple of things. Ordinarily, I would say go to every industry conference you can. We've got a little bit of an issue with that one, but you can go to a lot of the online conferences and get involved in those. But we do have LinkedIn and other forms of social media. So really reaching out to people and saying, hey, I'm new in town. Would be honored if you would accept my invitation to be part of my LinkedIn network. And be very careful about then pouncing on them for a meeting. Take a little bit of time. I've been getting a lot of requests that, within 5 seconds, then I would get a request for, half an hour of my time. Be careful. Don't, overwhelm people, but be clear about what it is you're looking to do.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. And so we are getting close to the end of our session. So this might be sort of our last question for the day, depending on how quickly we answer. But I am receiving a couple of different questions just regarding using technology now that we're doing less things in person and more online. And so we have Gerard asking, how effective are Zoom networking meetings? They are really replacing phone or face-to-face meetings over coffee. I'm also seeing some questions about how to engage well if you're talking to recruiters online in an online career fair situation. So would you have any advice about the how well those online meetings work and how best to do them?
Yeah. So, first and foremost, just because we're at home doesn't mean we need to go too casual. Okay. But at the same time, we don't want to overdo it. I mean, here's a perfect example. If I was doing this in person, I'd be wearing a tie. But at the same time, if I simply went just with a shirt, no jacket, that's just a little too casual for a professional meeting. So we really want to, have those types of common sense approaches to things. I think what you want to do is have something that you're going to sort of warm the conversation up with up front. The weather, sports, not the U.S. election. Don't bring that up. Any of these other things, like try and bring something up that's relevant to their business that gets them talking about, something that's important to them. You may have seen an article where you've noticed that they've just introduced a new product. And what you can do is to say, hey, I noticed that you just introduced the new, I don't know, iPhone. How did you support that? and really get them talking about something that's interesting to them early on, rather than relying upon, oh, it's a nice day and, I'm glad it's not snowing, for those of you that are in Toronto and area. So, so I would do that. And also, of course, just relax in terms of your environment. Stuff's going to happen. I'm lucky. I live alone. I don't have a cat. I don't have a dog. The worst that could happen is the fire alarms go off in the building, which I'll get over it, right? So it's really having that formality yet not being too uptight. The benefit is, face-to-face meetings are always more warm, but you can warm up a Zoom call just as well. Hope that helps.
Great. Kevin, did you want one more question before we wrap up for today, or?
Yeah, if it's, there may be, again, you had some that were common thread, or one that you think is really, really important.
Sure. Yeah, I think this one would be great. One question that's coming up is, how long should the UVS statements be, or how many points should be highlighted in them?
Yeah. Okay. So you're going to have, sort of 1 point that is your target audience. You're going to have 1 point that is, the pain issue that you're talking about. So you're going to have 1 point for each of the 5 or 4 sections, and then you're going to have 1 element of proof. You should be able to deliver these in roughly about 30 seconds, just like your elevator pitch. So this is something very specific that you can use to start conversations and start networking opportunities and what have you. The difference, of course, being it's about them, it's not necessarily about you. So hope that helps. Okay, so I guess that's the final question then, Sarah. Is that it?
Yes, I think so. We're at 1 minute remaining.
Okay, fair enough. So that's my nudge to get going. Thank you. So, I just wanted to, finish off by, thanking you. And as I mentioned earlier, you're going to receive a link with the webinar recording. We're going to send that out tomorrow in an email to you. You will also receive a survey to provide your feedback on this session. And please do give your feedback. It's very valuable. We made a number of changes. We did this on July 23rd. And if any of you attended that one, you've probably noticed some of the changes we've made already. So if you're interested in following the articles I've been publishing on LinkedIn that I referenced earlier, my URL is there, linkedin.com/in/Kevin J. Tennant. And, feel free to follow me so that as I publish new articles, you'll get them right away. And I really want to thank you for joining us today. We wish you, much success in your career search. We know it's going to be challenging, but we know that those that, keep their head down and continue to work are going to succeed and perhaps come out of this even better than when they started. So goodbye and thanks, everyone.